What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato. Today, I want to talk to you about how to keep going when you want to give up. One of the hardest things to do in any human existence, no matter if it's me, no matter if it's you, no matter if it's Jeff Bezos, no matter who you are, no matter what your journey, no matter where you are in your journey, one of the hardest things to constantly have to overcome is the feeling of wanting to give up and to keep going, because that feeling creeps up. Sometimes it creeps up faster, sometimes it creeps up slower, depending on who you are, where you are in your journey, how you were raised as a child. If you were raised to be take self-responsibility, to be independent, to make decisions on your own, then it's more likely that you'll more easily move down a journey, overcome obstacles, and keep going until you hit a point where it feels like you just can't make any more progress, or it feels like you just want to quit, or your mind starts chirping at you enough for you to start second guessing it. If, on the other hand, you were raised as a child and you weren't taught to take responsibility, and your parents hovered over you all the time, and they helped you with everything, and they helped you overcome all your problems, and you didn't really have to do anything, when you are confronted with an issue as an adult, it becomes much harder. It is much more challenging. It feels much more daunting, and you more quickly stop and have the urge to want to give up. You more quickly have those words chirping in the back of your head that are telling you, you can't do this. You're not worth it. It's it feels like Mount Everest I'm trying to climb. So this is as a Shinedown would say, this is a symptom of being human. It is something that we all go through, but it feels like we're the only one that goes through it, because one of the other symptoms of being human is that it is very lonely being a human, because we only know ourselves fully. We can know our spouse to a good degree, we can know close friends, we can get close to people and we can understand them, but we can never view things through their lens. We can never get behind their eyes and see how they see the world. We can understand to a degree, but we can't see how they see the world. So, one of the things about being a human is that you're the only one that sees things the way you see things. Some people are close, some people on the complete opposite spectrum, and then there's everywhere in between. But you're the only person that see things literally through your lens. And no one will ever understand that. No one will ever understand your lens and your way of seeing, because they can't be you. It's one of the things about being human. And that makes it challenging, because we feel like we're the only ones that feel a certain way. Whenever things go poorly, and we start having these voices in our head that are telling us that we can't do it, or that are telling us that we need to quit, or that telling us that it's worthless, or that telling us that we're we're wasting our time, whatever that voice is telling you, we think that it's only our we're the only person that goes through that, because we look at everybody else and we're like, well, look at Sally over there. She's been just knocking it out of the park. She's gotten a raise over the last couple of months. And then Tommy, he opened his business and it seems like the business is doing real well and he's smiling all the time. And Johnny's doing XYZ. He went on like 5 vacations last year. So who knows what kind of money he's making and how he feels. He must be happy all the time. So we look at other people and we don't think that they're on fire as well. We don't think that they also have the same thoughts or feelings going on as we do. Now, they may not have the same ones, and it may not be the same level of fire, but everyone around you is on fire, meaning everyone around you is lost to some degree and literally just figuring things out along the way. The analogy that I use is everyone is on fire. Everyone's on fire. Some people can just regulate their fire better. Some people do a terrible job of regulating their fire. That's the person that when you look at them, you're like, yep, that person's a mess, because literally they might physically be a mess. But also, it's like every time you talk to them, it's just something else. There's another thing that's screwed up, or another project that fell through, or whatever. And then there's the person over here where it seems like they just kind of click along and they just keep knocking projects out and things aren't, not as much of a struggle for them. While both of those people are on opposite ends of the spectrum, they still each are on fire to some degree. The person who is obviously on fire, you can look at that and go, yep, they're a mess. And you can feel good that you're not that big of a mess. But the other person who seems like they're just able to click things off constantly without too much of a struggle, you look at that and you go, man, I wish I had my shit together like them. I wish I was able to just knock things out of the park like they do. I wish I could just line up a project, get it done, move on to the next goal and just knock that goal out, because it seems like they're able to do that. But what you don't see is all the obstacles that they've hit along the way. And maybe the number of times that they had to sit in their office by themselves and go, man, I don't know that this is worth it. I just don't feel like I can overcome this next step. That's what you don't see. And that's why this is challenging. But it's worth having the conversation because in today's day and age, especially, we are confronted constantly with this stream, literally a feed of people that are just showing you all the good stuff they got going on. Look how sexy my body is. Look at this new car I bought. Look at this new house. Look at how happy our family is. Look at this. Look at that. So you just have this constant stream of nonsense that it is nonsense that we buy into. So it makes it that much more challenging to recognize that everyone else is also on fire and they're just regulating their fire at a different degree than you are. And that's why this conversation is important today, because when you recognize that everyone's on fire and all we can do is figure out how to regulate our fire better, we're never going to we will eventually be put out. But that's not what you want. If you get what I'm saying, you don't want your fire to be put out. That means you're dead. And I'm assuming that's not what you actually want. So you will never be, hmm, your fire will never be put out in the way that you think it will. You will always feel lost. You'll always be just having to guess about what decisions to make. Just sometimes you get better at it. And then you run into something and you feel you're worse at it again. But the wonderful thing about success is not that problems go away. Again, it's not that the fire stops. It's that you get higher level problems or you get hotter fire to have to manage, if that makes sense. So, at any rate, before we jump into the rest of the conversation, I will encourage you to hit pause real quick and go and jump and give us a quick review. You can give us a review on any of the platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, I will highly encourage you to subscribe. Our YouTube has been doing pretty damn good, which I'm excited about. When I mean good for us, relative, considering it's only been a channel for 3 or 4 months, something like that. I think we have like 40 subscribers, which doesn't seem like much. I'm excited about it because we add 10 every 2 or 3 weeks, which has been super cool. Now, I'm sure, Johnny, whoever over there that I'm going to compare myself to real quick as I talk about not comparing, he adds 10 a second, but, I'm not Johnny yet. It is the Good Wolf Project. So if you are on YouTube, help us grow a little faster by hitting that subscribe button. Otherwise, you can give us a review on any of the Spotify's and Apples of the world. And remember that the more reviews we have and the more subscribers we have, the more the message gets sent to somebody else. So you're literally helping us be able to send that message out. And I appreciate you guys doing that. So what sparked this idea to have this conversation today? Actually, before I jump into that, I'm going to take a drink of this wonderful Liquid Death sparkling water. We're not sponsored by them yet. I'm not trying to be, but hey, if you're watching or listening, at any rate, you know what's amazing? This is just a side note. Today, I wanted one of these. I went to a gas station. They didn't sell it. I went to Remke, which if you're not from the Cincinnati area, you have no clue what that means. It's a grocery store, a small grocery store in the area. They didn't have it. I'm like, what is it? What is wrong with people? Why aren't they selling these things? Walmart finally had it, or Walgreens finally had it, of course. Nonetheless, now I know where to go. Had to put out a fire today. So the thing that sparked this idea to have this conversation today was yesterday I was given a presentation at a company in the area called Modus Freight. They're a logistics company, very quickly growing, by the way, logistics company. And while I was giving the presentation, or at the end, of course, I asked if anybody has any questions. What we're talking about is how you overcome your own, how you improve your belief about yourself, about who you are and what you think you're capable of doing. So we went through a process, we talked about it, we talked about how you can start to do that on a daily basis, as well as some other things. And one of the guys at the end says, how do you stop the thoughts in your head whenever you feel like you want to quit, whenever you get to a point and those thoughts in your head start coming up, you go, I don't know if I can do this. You start doubting yourself a little bit. I don't know if I'm capable. Is this really worth my time? Am I actually going to be able to achieve this? And so on and so forth. He's like, how do you make that stop? How do you stop that whenever that starts to happen? Excuse me. Because the way he explained it, which is true for, again, almost everybody, is that, you know, sometimes it comes daily, sometimes it's a couple times a day, but sometimes it doesn't happen. I feel like I can kind of go and get things done, and then all of a sudden it'll pop up randomly. So that's what sparked this conversation. That's what sparked this idea, because he brought out a question. There were 20 people, I think, in that room, in that session, and he brought out a question that all of them looked at him and they all nodded their head. All nodded their head. It's mostly guys, by the way, which is ironic because guys aren't meant to be vulnerable. Guys aren't known to be vulnerable. And so he brought the thing up, and everyone else agreed with him. Yes, yeah, I get what you're saying. Especially in their field, what they do is they sit there and call people all day long. That's what they're trying to do, is trying to get more freight moving. So they call a company and see if they can move their freight for them, and that's what they're doing just all day long. So you can imagine the feeling that can happen whenever you're doing that. That's any sales company that you work for, or anybody that's in sales. That's what you're doing, is basically getting rejected all the time until you get to that one person that says yes. So it's understandable that he has this idea, but he was asking specifically about, some personal areas. He was a bigger guy. And so he struggled losing weight, and he struggled keeping himself in shape in certain areas. There were other people there that struggled, getting through their phone calls and doing things like that. So we all have these thoughts that go through our head. We all have these resisting questions that happen. So the question is it you that are you the only one that it's happened to? We already went through that you're not the only person that this happens to. Some people do it better, some people do it worse. One of the tricks of the people that do it better, and this is first, and these people maybe don't understand this at a conscious level. A lot of them probably don't. They can just, like I said, a lot of people who are raised to be responsible for themselves, especially at a young age, to be more independent, make their own decisions, work through their own problems, at their 10, 11, 12, all the way through their teenage years. Those people are more easily work through things. So if they grew up in that kind of atmosphere, they can more easily work through things without feeling that. But the problem is we're so damn spoiled in society, and our parents, especially over the last couple of decades, have become these quote helicopter parents, and hence the name, that are ruining the adulthood of many children, that the kids aren't able to, once they become adults or young adults, aren't able to problem solve themselves, aren't able to work through things themselves, because everything feels so big, everything feels like a challenge. So, but the people who start to figure it out, what they're working through, and again, they may not know this consciously, but what they're working through is basically a change of habit. Now, we've talked about habits before on this podcast numerous times. Most people, when they refer to a habit, what they're referring to is adding a healthy habit to their life, be that exercise or nutrition or better sleep or a morning routine or cold plunging or whatever the habit is. It's adding something to your life shifting yourself toward a more healthy behavior. However, we also have habits of thinking. We also have habit patterns of thinking, maybe is a better way to put it. And this is, if you can understand this point, then you can tell yourself down the road more easily, talk yourself off a cliff down the road if you can understand this point, because it is true. What I'm about to say is true. And the resistance that your mind will have when I say this wants to tell you that it's not true, partly because it's hard to take responsibility for your thoughts, much harder to do. It's much simpler to take responsibility for, just what you eat. All I got to do is make a different decision. Cool. Great. I can do that. Although clearly many people have struggled to do that. But nonetheless, it's much simpler to do something like that. What's much harder is to change the pattern of your thinking, which is just a habit. It is just the way you currently think. It is just how the loop in which you start to spiral, if you will. So let me give you an example of what this looks like today. So yesterday I had the presentation at Modus talking about this thing. He asked that question, that one in particular. I actually talked about it on my story a little bit yesterday too on Instagram, which if you're not following me there, I highly suggest you do that. Today, I actually had that day. This morning, I woke up, I felt a little off. I didn't sleep all that well last night, had a goofy ass dream. Didn't sleep all that well for the last like 2 or 3 hours. Woke up, went through, whatever I do, got to the gym, kind of felt my body kind of fell off. I just kind of kept going and pushed through it, which, I'm at the gym. I'm going to go ahead and do what I'm going to do. And, my body just kind of felt, my mind was telling me certain things, just feel, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I feel like doing this next set. I don't know if I feel like doing this next set. My body's just not in it. So those things were kind of going through my mind. So I got through the workout. I'm like, okay, cool. No, I actually feel pretty good about this. I got through the workout, feel good. It was a good workout, not the best, not great. I actually had a little tweak in my hip when I was squatting, but no big deal. I worked through it. It went out. No big problem. Got it fixed. Came to the studio and started working, and the same sort of thing started happening. I'm sitting here working through a project that I'm working on, which will be releasing here in the next month or so, which I'm excited to tell you about. And I'm working through it and I'm pushing through it. And I'm sitting there like staring at the screen because I'm trying to figure out where to go with it. And my mind's just not making any connections. My mind's just not, nothing's flowing. It doesn't feel like I can grasp anything and move it around. And then my mind starts to go, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right project to work on? Should I be making and building something else? So my mind starts to question what's happening, to question what I'm doing because I'm getting close to doing it. Does that make sense? Because I'm getting close to finishing it and launching it, my mind's starting to question what I'm doing. My habit in the past, which I have recognized and I was able to stop it today, my habit in the past is when I do something and I work on it and I get to the point where it's ready to launch, I will start to question if I'm supposed to be doing, is this the right thing to do? Is this really the thing that's going to help us move forward or help me make money or help me reach more people or whatever? And it starts to question. And then I go, well, maybe not. Well, maybe I should look at something else. Well, let me do a little bit, of research, famous last words. Let me try. Okay, well, okay, maybe it makes sense to try something different. And I'm not saying I did that all the time, but historically, it would not be unusual for me to kind of go through that pattern and then try something different. Now, guess what doesn't happen when you start something, get 80% done, and then convince yourself to do something different? Two things. Number one, you never actually complete anything good. Number two is you don't make progress because you never complete the thing that you said you were going to complete, that you planned, that you looked at, and that you already know is going to be something that's going to help you, something that's going to move you forward. You already have done the work to figure out the plan, to figure out the idea. to go, okay, I know that this is something that can be helpful, and I know that this is something that can help me make progress. So when you convince yourself to do otherwise and to start looking in another direction, you don't complete that thing. And then if you do it again, you don't complete that thing. So therefore, your progress is always in this not moving anywhere, this area where it doesn't go, where it just kind of stays in the same place because you're never finishing anything. Excuse me. So this is how this happens with other people. The guy who was asking the question, he was talking about his exercise and his fitness. And what people will do is they will start something, exercise, getting in the weight room, whatever the program is, and they'll do it for about 6 weeks. And then they'll start to convince themselves that they're not making progress. Well, I just don't, scale's not moving as fast as I want it to. My schedule also just changed, so it's going to be a little harder to get in here. I feel like, I don't know, I'm also not feeling very motivated to be in here. So you've gotten to a point where you're actually starting to really make progress. And then your mind starts to bring you back around and loop you in a different direction, loop you back toward a negative way of thinking, going, I don't know if this is going to work out. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like we should just stop this. I feel like we should quit because just something's not right here. And that level, those questions that go through your head are different for different people. Sometimes it's more negative. I don't I don't even know why I'm trying because I feel like I can't do this, or it's something that seems realistic. Well, I've been doing this for a couple of months now, but my schedule just changed and it's going to be hard to figure out. So I'm going to go ahead and take a break. So it can be different levels. It can be more obvious and it can be less obvious. So the goal is to recognize that it's happening first, to know that it is just a way of thinking. It is your habit of thinking right now. So it's to recognize that it's happening, get yourself out of the context to think about it a little more. And by think about it, I don't mean go do some research. Today, exactly what I did was, got to be about 11:30 or so. And I had done, a little bit of work, but I was just kind of frustrated with it. And I had those thoughts kind of like spiraling through my head. And I stopped for a second and I'm like, nah, this ain't right. I I'm just trying to convince myself of something right now. So I need to just step away, get out, let me go chill for a little bit. I know I'm going to be here late till 9 or 9:30 tonight. So let me go chill for a couple hours and refresh, go for a walk and see what happens. See what, go from there. And that's exactly what I did. Guess what? I know that the plan's going to work. I know that it's going to work. But I had to get out of the context to be able to have a clear mind to be able to think it through. Not again to go do some more research and try and find something else to put my attention to, but to just go, okay, how am I actually feeling about this thing? Is that useful? Is that true? Or am I just trying to make something up? And most of the time, you're just trying to make something up to stop yourself because you're actually starting to do something. You're actually doing something useful, which your current self does not like. Does not like. You want to stay the same. Do you hear me? Your current identity wants you to stay exactly the way that you are. So when you start to actually churn and move a little bit, that's when those thoughts will start to pop up. And it can be a simple thought, something direct, like, I don't know if this is worth it. Or it can be something much more sneaky, much more sneaky. The economy has really changed. I don't know if it makes sense to do this right now, which seems like a reason, but you're on the precipice, and your current self doesn't like that. Your current self wants you to fall off the cliff. It doesn't want you to keep going. It wants you to fall back down the mountain. It doesn't want you to reach the top and then find a new mountain to climb. So you have to get yourself out of the context of where you are. If you're, for instance, you know, exercise, you're at the gym and you're just like, man, I just don't really know if this is the place for me to be. I don't know if I should be working out anymore. I don't know. I feel like it's taking a lot of time. Don't don't make a decision when you're feeling emotional about it. Don't make a decision when your brain is spiraling in circles. Recognize that you're spiraling, step out of the context and go find a better way to make a decision. Go for a walk and go walk around and then process what's going on. And as you start to do that, break yourself from the context, work away from making a decision in the moment, in the heat of the emotion and the thoughts, thinking about it and then making a new decision. What you're doing is creating a new habit loop, a new way of thinking. So normally for me today, let's say 3 years ago, if I would have had these kind of thoughts, it would have taken me a couple days to kind of work through it. Maybe 2 or 3 days to work through it and to maybe start doing something else. I would tinker with things to make me feel like I'm doing something, and then eventually I'd start doing something else. But today I just decided, okay, 11:30, I'm going to stop. I'm going to go away for a couple of hours and I'll come back. It took me a couple hours, which I'd like for it to be a shorter time frame than that, but it's better than 3 days. And in a couple hours, I went, yeah, that's not. I mean, I'm just trying to convince myself of something. That's not true. That's all. So I'm making my lows higher, is all that I'm doing. I'm not making them go away. I'm not trying to pretend like they're not there, which is counterproductive because that's just ingraining them more. What I'm trying to do is make them higher, make them shorter, make them more compact, to go from 3 days to 2.5 days to 2 days to 1.5 days to 1 day and so on. And that's the goal, is to shrink that time down where you recognize what's happening, work through it, and then get back into action. Because the sooner that you get back into action, the quicker you're making a new loop. The quicker you're going from this loop over here, which you're currently used to. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I need to. My schedule's changing. I feel like this is a waste of time. Whatever that you're trying to convince yourself up over here, which is your normal loop. When you break the loop, suddenly that loop has to go somewhere. So you break the loop and you start thinking about it and you're like, well, that's not really true. And then you start a new loop over in this direction. And at first, the loop's just a couple of dots. It's very loose, kind of hard to grasp onto. And then the more often you do it, it becomes dashes. And it's like, okay, I'm starting to be more aware. I'm starting to close the gap and make myself work through this quicker until eventually this is the loop that you work through. And this is more rare. The negative side is more rare. So that's the trick. The people who work through it, whether they know it consciously or not, whether it's a conscious action of their own or it just happens this way, that's what they're doing. They're going from their current negative way of thinking to a different way, a habit of thinking. They're breaking the loop somewhere and creating a new loop. They're creating a new habit, a new way of thinking, a new way of working through things so that they start to build belief in themselves, who they are, what they can do. Start to go, no, I'm not going to stay where I am. I'm not going to keep convincing myself to stay here. I'm going to work in a different direction. I'm going to work in that direction. And I'm going to keep doing this and I'm going to complete what I said I'm going to do because I said I'm going to do it and because I believe that it's the thing that's going to move me in a better direction. And then once I'm finished with it, then I'm going to do something different. Or I'm going to keep doing it if it keeps working. If it keeps working, I'm going to just keep doing it. Because guess what? If it's working, what do you do? Why would you change it? Like I said, this is such an important conversation, and 20 or 30 minutes, however long this ends up being, is not long enough to be able to actually go in and work through things. But it's worth you recognizing yourself when it starts to happen, because it happens to everybody and it happens regularly. And if it happens daily for you right now, then you're going to have to work on it every time it happens, 3 times a day, if it is. And that's just the way that it is. Every time it happens, when you work on it, you move in a different direction. When you don't and you spiral back down, you take a step back. And that is life. If you're planning on being here until your fire literally goes out, then it's worth working on. It's worth putting effort into so that you can get effort out. So you can get things out of life that you want, that you say you want. But this is the work that has to be done. It's not just going to happen. You're not just going to start and it's going to be easy and you're just going to be able to move through it. Nobody else around you did it either. Nobody else around you did it either. Maybe some of them got a little lucky. Maybe some of them made it look a little easier. But I promise you that they all are on fire in some way, shape, or form. You just don't know how that is. So all you can do is focus on you and working through it and creating a new loop so that you can create something for yourself. That's the point. And that's our conversation for today. Like I said, I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you leaving a review or hitting subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. No matter what, go out there, put effort in. Your life is worth it. You are worth it. No matter what you tell yourself, no matter what your fucking people around you tell you, well, why are you trying to do that? Well, why are you trying to make yourself better? Well, fuck them. You are worth it. You are worth it. And decide to do something about it. It's worth doing every single day so that you can have the life that you want. But you can't let the crabs pull you back down into the hot water. Okay? Thanks again. Appreciate you guys so much. Till next time, get out there, step into growth.